So good evening, and it's good to have you here, both of you with us. So I thought we would just look at the paradigm shift in the research and the policing focus in both the countries. So maybe here in India now, we're looking at the legislative overall. We've just replaced the colonial laws, the Indian Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code and the Indian Evidence Act with another 3 acts, BNA, BSA, and BNSS. So that's what we are doing right now. So I think in America, you've shifted to the less law, more order. Yes. So you're trying to look at how to set things right in the family and catch them young to stop the school to prison pipeline. Yes. Looks like that's what you're doing. So if you can tell us something about that.
What we're trying to do is take preventive action and learn about, we can arrest people time and time again and it really doesn't solve anything unless we start taking the time to address the root of the problem. Otherwise it is just a never-ending cycle. And luckily we've seen it now more so than previous 20 years or so, where we're getting our law enforcement agencies, our police departments, our sheriff's departments, recognizing the tools that academia can bring to help them with the problem. And so we're getting more partnerships between our police communities and our universities, working together to try to solve the problem, to again address the root cause of the issues.
And in the area of victimology, you were saying something about that at the inaugural function. So in India, we've just started introducing victim into the criminal code. So we've just introduced the word victim. It's been defined in the code. And we're just looking at plea bargaining and something called the zero FIR, when you can register the case in any of the police stations. You know, India is a large country and the distances are huge. So that's where we are now. So it looks like in the US you're looking at the victim-offender overlap.
Yeah, so victims often leave their situation with nothing. So providing services to get them back under their feet, to bring in services that are restorative justice type services, bring services that basically help to rehabilitate the victim themselves. We often focus on offender rehabilitation, but the victims are left traumatized. They're left with PTSD. They're left, and also with very little resources. So victim advocacy is extremely important.
And I've seen a lot of research that's been done on the victim-offender overlap, how the victims turn into offenders because they have not got any reconciliation and no victim assistance. So the victim turned offender. So you're working on that as well, and you're addressing offenders and their previous victimization.
And like what we also found is, I did some work on a project to where a team of Turkish researchers up in, I think it was the University of Cincinnati, was able to develop an algorithm that accurately predicted who would be a victim of violent crime, if someone would be a victim of violent crime. And as we were seeing, they're an offender one day, but by looking at this algorithm, they were able to determine that this individual is likely to be shot or killed. And that was actually with accuracy. And we were actually, the reason I came in, we were looking at trying to alter that algorithm to use it to predict victims of human trafficking, and that way, once we find a cluster, we could flood that area with information and education, so hopefully they won't become victims. But we know that, a victim in many cases can eventually become an offender, because that victim may be a victim in that world for so long. That's their world, right, wrong, or indifferent. And with some of the human trafficking issues, we've seen them go from victims to working in some of the houses involved with transport, unfortunately, in the other side of it.
Yeah, I can speak to a human trafficking victim that I interviewed as part of my research. She was trafficked from the age of 14, and she ended up being trafficked by a motorcycle outlaw group called the Hells Angels. And she was basically taken from California to Mexico, where she was forced to work in a brothel. As she grew up and became older, because of really not being identified as a victim, she herself ended up becoming a trafficker, a madam, started recruiting other girls and forcing them into that life because that's all she knew, and she had no resources to escape.
So that's the reason I see in America you're focusing on victim assistance to prevent this kind of overlap. And yes, victim assistance has proven to be crime prevention in a way. Absolutely. Because that's what you're doing. You're preventing that transition from being a victim into an offender.
And unfortunately in the U.S., the victim advocacy programs are not uniform across the country. We have it at the federal level. We have 50 independent states who some have very strong victim advocacy rules on the books for protections and such, and some states unfortunately do not. Many police, there's 18,000 plus law enforcement agencies, policing agencies in the U.S. Not all of them have a victim advocate. So we're making some progress. We're doing well in some areas, but we still have a lot of room for improvement. And there's even specialized, in some countries, specialized victim advocacy programs. For example, in Colombia, if there's an identified victim of human trafficking, that individual could register with this special registry, run through the victim advocacy program that gets them additional benefits, additional assistance, additional resources. And the last time I checked with them, they had over 700 individuals registered on the special victim advocacy registry that they were assisting above and beyond what they do for a typical victim. So there again, there's room for improvement. We can all learn from each other, and we can all improve, because none of us are working in a perfect system, unfortunately. Maybe one day we'll get there, but it's not today.
Yes, we have a long way to go as well. The victim still is treated like a witness, PW1 prosecution. Witness 1, PW2. So we have to give the voice. The victim impact statement that you do is something that we need to emulate, and we have to move towards getting a comprehensive legislation for victims as well in our country.
Yeah, unfortunately, in our system, our court system is an adversarial one. So the victim isn't just a victim. Sometimes they're portrayed as an offender or as an evil.
Victim blaming.
Yes. And,
exactly.
So it makes it even worse in that respect, and that's sometimes is why it's difficult. Sometimes in some cases to get victims to come forward because of what's in front of them once they do, and they know this. And so we're also actively working with our victim advocacy programs and in the system to change some things in the system for legal protections for victims, and that's one of the human trafficking aspects that you were working on. That victims have an advocate there.
Yeah, and going back to, you mentioned legislation, and so the area that I primarily focus on is human trafficking. And in the United States, our first anti-human trafficking law was passed only in 2001, and many states have inadequate laws. The state that I live in Florida, actually our organization was able to get the first anti-grooming bill passed in the state of Florida in 2024, and then we were able to emulate that in 4 other states. So it just goes to show, here we are, just in last year, still enacting first-time anti-trafficking legislation.
Our new legislations have just defined trafficking, and we've just brought it into our legislation. So all of us have a long way to go.
That's been going on forever. We're now finally getting to a point where it's very unfortunate.
Interesting. And when it comes to research, here in India, we're just moving from the doctrinal research to the empirical research. We're trying to look at data, trying to see if we can base our policy on this evidence. So that's what we're trying to do. You've been doing it for a long time in the U.S.
We've been doing it for
a long
while,
time.
And both of us have been active in influencing and writing policy for lobbyists, for legislators at the federal level and the state level. And so it's a that part can be challenging sometimes.
Huge challenge.
Because everyone knows what we want to do, but because of politics being what they are, we sometimes concessions, and we fall short of the mark.
Who belled the cat? That's exactly. what is happening. And you've moved into predictive policing as well, which and the use of algorithms
That's where
that you
things
can.
are moving, and we're going to get there with much more accuracy than we have now. You know, the tools we're using now were still based on the old statistical methods and statistical algorithm we used earlier, and they were flawed. They're flawed. So now, you know, we have AI that we can interject into these models that can bring in other things like social media, like geospatial, just other data mining that can make those models more accurate and better, and hopefully reduce the bias that when we go back and look at the old models. Yeah, there's bias there. Oops, sorry. So we're hoping.
Yes.
Now, we know it's not a cure-all, and the sector is, because AI may then create its own loop and exacerbate certain problems. So we need to be careful moving forward, but I believe that AI will be effective in that area once we kind of get a few more things worked out.
That risk assessment that you do is also based on a lot of data which is biased, like you said, and the Compass, the latest software tool that you use as well, correction offender prediction. So that again has a database which was in that time and space different from what it is. So the predictions are really not very accurate. So I see that the research is proving otherwise. So work is happening in that area in the US. And coming to the judiciary, we just have a conflict here in India because people want punishment. They want to be punitive. And the laws say that you need to, jail is an exception, bail is to be done. But then there needs to be a balance between what the judges want and what the law wants and what the people need. So we see that you are working with the offenders, like the profiling. You have started profiling the prisoners and trying to see assess their risk, like in terms of giving them parole, in terms of releasing them, everything. You have a database that you can use the software and do. That's something that we need to work on. Can you talk about that a bit?
We have, when someone comes into our prison system, they are classified. And they'll go through a series of tests and observations and such, and we grab certain data from these individuals. And as researchers, when we're granted access to that, it can be very helpful in figuring out different things, different questions we're trying to answer. So we're lucky in that we have data. And plus, with an offender, they're tracked in many different times and points in time. And the software and the tools are getting better for us to predict, to see patterns of behavior and use those former patterns of behavior to attempt to accurately predict future behavior. And again, room for improvement, yes, but we're lucky in that we have these tools available to us, and unfortunately, I know not everyone does. So again, we have work to do, and we have room for improvement, but we're getting there.
Yes. And coming to the investigation, both of you have been police officers. So again, that's a huge challenge, and we have a lot of pending cases here, and the investigation needs to be strengthened. For that, the profiling that needs to be done, because you have incorporated the GIS as well. So you have the Rigel, and you have these software that could tell you, plot the houses of the previous offenders, and then link this particular offense to that. So you have that geographical information system as well.
Yes.
And the YCAP, they use it largely in Canada, but I think most other countries are also using that. So if you can tell us something about that.
When I first started, we had a big map on the wall with different color push pins on
We
the map
still do.
indicating different. In some places, we still do. And I'm one who's good at picking up patterns, and I can imagine the number of things I missed. Where, if now we have it in a computer, that same map and push pins we put in a computer, I can look at it and I still see patterns, but I'm probably still missing something. Well, now we have as basically my assistant, we can have AI help.
Oh,
To
exactly.
detect patterns that I'm missing, that Jarrod's missing, that we just don't see, whether it's, oh, there's a number 3 in every address, or these houses, the houses that were hit had a red door, as opposed that we just don't see when we're looking at the pushpin map. But if the data is gathered properly by our personnel in the field, and this is where cooperation training, for these tools to be the most effective. We have to get individuals to, gather all this information that maybe we didn't gather before, because now we have a tool that can take that information and turn it into something valuable and usable. Where if they tell, if for me looking at the pushpin map, I don't see a door. I just see a red pushpin that means a car burglary.
So investigation is moving fast with all the software. It is the way to go.
It should. As an assistant, as a helper, not as what's conducting the entire investigation.
Definitely, it can't replace good
It
investigation.
shouldn't.
Yes.
Because I feel we still need the human in the loop. Because while, we both know from our previous, line of work that you have to rely on what's in here and rely on what's in here. And AI can't do that. Can't tell me what's in here.
Yeah.
That comes from just doing this, experience, exposure, and, a lot of basically learning in the field.
AI can't beat the head and the heart
Yeah.
together of a good policeman. Yes, thank you. So coming to the work with the prisoners. In India, we've just introduced the community service as an alternative to prison to reduce the overcrowding in prisons as well. And I see the research in America talks about harm reduction and how you moved from nothing's working to what will work. And you've moved from that zero tolerance and strict laws to now decriminalizing things like drugs. And you've moved forward to reduce the prison population as well. So if you can tell us something about how you predict that this prisoner would not be a recidivist. And again, you use the software as well, which...
We try because it can be, that is a very, very difficult job to do with any degree of accuracy. And one of the reasons I feel personally is that while they're in the facility, while they're in the prison, the environment's very controlled and it's structured. It's what oftentimes a lot of these individuals actually need in their life. And unfortunately, they got in trouble before they can go into the military, and this is where they ended up. But we have them, do very well in that environment. Then we basically just kick them out. And where do they go? Back to the same community usually that they got in trouble in the first place, with the same people, with this. So it's hard to, to say that okay, this one will never reoffend. This. When you get them in that home environment again.
There has to be job options, right? So if an inmate is getting out of prison, there has to be not only the rehabilitation component, whether it's addressing the underlying cause they went, anger, whether it's anger management, substance abuse, whatever that looks like, but there has to be opportunity, right? So the United States is good at creating, kind of like a halfway house type environment, that they're not necessarily going back into the crime-ridden communities that they came from, but instead they're going to somewhere that has semi-structure like they had in prison, but more freedoms than they did to be able to slowly integrate back in society. With that said, our recidivism rate's still around 67 to 73%, which is horrifying.
We use that Y-rank tool a lot to assess the risk and then recommend.
Right. And it is heartbreaking when the system fails and somebody is released and within 48 hours commits a murder, commits crimes against persons. It's discouraging. But from my experience working with a lot of prisoners, interviewing them, going into prison, conducting interviews, it ultimately comes down to opportunity on the outside. If it's there, they have a chance to survive without coming back to prison. But if it's not, then they're going to go back into their old ways.
I always think it's like getting a lion cub, nurturing him in a home, and then leaving him out in the jungle without preparing him for that. So when we talk about the 4 Rs: reformation, rehabilitation, resocialization, and reintegration. We need to work with the community as well. You can't do that with him in the prison. You need to get the community and prepare the community for him more than you prepare him for the community.
We were working in a project in a Central American country, and we were asked to come in and consult and assist and help, and we had a great plan, and we were on the ground for less than 24 hours, and we figured that this isn't going to work, because we've gone on the ground, talked to people, and saw what is actually needed, and what is needed is for these people in this country is options, because they really have none. And so we started formulating a new plan to introduce options, to give these individuals the opportunity to stand up on their own feet, and to give the people who, the younger ones, as we were talking to many of the prisoners, there's only so much we can do for you at this point, but our goal is to make sure your little brother, your little sister, your cousins don't end up in the same situation you did, because we think we found a way to give you guys options, and to give people here options. And it was to address the root causes the true root causes of what's going on in that country, with the crime, with the murder rate, with the violence. And some of it is, little neighborhood jobs, set them up with $10,000 we can either give you, the ability to make food and sell it. We can give you some car washing equipment to where you can have your own little car wash. We can, get you the equipment necessary for you to make concrete blocks and sell the blocks. And that's a job. And it's a job for other people in that little community, in that little pocket. And then finally, for the first time, the little kids who live there see that there's options other than selling drugs, other than killing someone, to move ahead in life. And so that's, and again, this is just the one Central American country I'm speaking about. But really, that's the root of a lot of it, is that the people, whether right or wrong, feel their perception is they don't have options. And their perception is their reality, regardless of how accurate it may be. So that's what a lot of times we're really dealing with, is we need to change people's perceptions and to address the root cause of these issues, and to stop this endless cycle of incarceration and repeat incarceration, and to give the younger people, I don't have to do that, I can do this instead.
And I think the community has to have some buy-in as well. So if somebody gets out of prison and they have gone through rehabilitation programs, they have created or developed a skill set, some type of trade skill, employers have to be willing to take a chance on these people and give them employment, because if there's no employment options, they're likely to fall back into the only way they know to make money to survive. So, when somebody does come out of the prison, especially if they have certifications from the prison that reflect that they went through rehabilitation programs, that they developed job skills, and they have the actual prison certificates to show it, employers who are willing to give that person a chance are basically really giving that person the best opportunity. There's an organization out of Los Angeles that is run by a former bank robber who was arrested by the FBI, and he decided whenever he got out, if he got out, that he would set up basically a connection between inmates that have gone through these rehabilitation programs, as well as trade skill programs, and then employers. And his recidivism rate is less than 10%. He's doing amazing, amazing work. And he's basically keeping these people from going back to prison because he's giving them self-worth within the community, and more importantly, perhaps, a job.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. It's been a wonderful experience. First time here at this university, first time in the country. And it just helps me bring new tools, new information, new opportunities for my students, for the police agencies I work with around the world. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here, to be able to speak to your students. Has been a tremendous opportunity. Often we resolve ourselves to trying to solve local problems without looking at it from a global context. And doing the work here at the university, listening to the information being shared at the conference, I like to see us coming together, trying to solve really what we think are local problems, but are actually global problems, and by working together, we can be more effective at solving them.
Thank you very much for this great opportunity to have this networking session and learning from each other. It was a great opportunity, and I hope we carry on this in the future as well.
Look forward to it.
Thank you very much.